"I trusted you," I whispered as the banker's voice sliced through my world. "All 50,000. Gone. Every withdrawal under your sister's name." And just like that, the girl who once brushed my hair before school had erased my life. Bank account drained, my name forged, and the house I built from scratch sold behind my back. But that wasn't the worst part. Because when I clutched the eviction notice with shaking hands and begged, "Tell me it's not true, Olivia, the sister who raised me sent me just 7 words. This is for our good. Don't look." And disappeared. But lies don't disappear. They rot. And hers? They were rotting fast. One sister stole everything. The other stood on a stage with the proof. And when the crowd turned, she finally said it out loud. "I destroyed my sister." The betrayal shattered me. But the silence? That's what made me dangerous. Even monsters tremble when the one they buried walks into the light. If you've ever watched someone you loved choose greed over blood, hit like. And if this story already breaks your heart, don't hesitate to drop a "I understand" in the comments. Funny how one forged signature can crack open a truth they never thought I'd find 3 months earlier. My name is Sophie Carter. I'm 28 years old, a graphic designer who spends most of her days bent over glowing screens, shifting pixels until they blur together. From the outside, my life might look steady, maybe even enviable. I live in suburban Atlanta, Georgia, on a street lined with towering oak trees, their branches curving overhead like a cathedral ceiling. Neighbors wave when they pass. Kids laugh as their bike tires skid against pavement. In the mornings, the air smells of damp leaves and cut grass. In the evenings, of charcoal grills and smoke drifting lazily from backyards. It looks like the kind of neighborhood where nothing could go wrong, but appearances can be deceiving. Behind closed doors, even the safest streets can fracture. When I was 6 years old, my parents died in a car crash. The memory is scattered. Rain-slicked asphalt, police lights streaking against the darkness, the murmurs of strangers offering words I couldn't comprehend. What I remember most is the void, the heavy silence that pressed into me when I realized they were gone. Standing in that silence with me was my sister, Olivia. She was 18 at the time, just stepping into her own future. She had been accepted into a pre-med program, with dreams of becoming the first doctor in our family. But when our parents died, she chose me instead. Olivia stepped into a role she hadn't asked for: guardian, caretaker, second mother. She took shifts at diners, at grocery stores, at warehouses, anything that would pay the bills. She worked herself to exhaustion so I could have food, school clothes, and some semblance of stability. She brushed my hair before class, sat through every recital, stayed awake to calm me when nightmares pulled me from sleep. For years, she was the one constant in a life I feared could fall apart at any moment. I leaned on her, trusted her completely, the way you trust the ground under your feet. 2 years ago, when I finally had enough saved, I thought it was my turn to give something back. I bought us a small house, 2 bedrooms, a porch that creaked when you stepped on it, a cozy living room where sunlight filtered through curtains in soft golden stripes, and a kitchen that always smelled faintly of cinnamon, no matter what we cooked. It wasn't grand, but it was ours. I poured my life savings into it, every cent I had. Olivia promised she would help with payments, that together we'd build a future we could finally call secure. For the first time, I believed we weren't just surviving. We were building something that would last. This morning began like so many others. Pale light slanted into the living room, dust drifting through the beams. The faint bitterness of yesterday's coffee clung to the air. Somewhere outside, a lawnmower hummed steadily, blending with the chatter of birds. Barefoot, I stepped onto the porch, the concrete cool beneath me, and opened the rusted mailbox. Inside was the usual stack of bills and glossy flyers. But one envelope stood out, crumpled, edges worn, my name scrawled in rushed handwriting I recognized immediately: Olivia's. My stomach knotted as I tore it open. Inside was a single line, written so forcefully the pen had nearly torn the paper. "Sophie, this is for our good." That was it. 7 words. No apology, no explanation. Just that. Cold. Final. I stumbled inside, dropped the letter onto the counter, and flipped open my laptop. My hands shook so hard I could barely type. I logged into our joint bank account, the one we used for the mortgage, for everything. The screen loaded, numbers blinked, and then nothing. Zero. $50,000. Gone. I stared at the screen, my throat closing. My pulse pounded so loudly I could barely hear. I scrolled through the transactions, hoping I had misread, that it was some glitch. But the history was clear. Withdrawal after withdrawal, and every single one carried her name, Olivia. The refrigerator hummed behind me. The clock ticked. Every ordinary sound felt louder, sharper, against the collapse of everything I thought was safe. My chest tightened, nausea rising. The sister who raised me, who swore we were partners in this life, had emptied everything we had. I turned toward the pile of bills on the counter. Electricity, water, insurance. Each one stared up at me like an accusation. I flipped through them, and then another envelope slid free, a contract, legal, stamped and sealed. My eyes scanned the page and my knees nearly buckled. At the bottom was a signature, my name. But it wasn't mine. It was Olivia's hand, copying mine with precision. She had forged my signature. She had signed to sell our house. The paper trembled in my grip. The home I had sacrificed everything for, the only place that had ever felt safe, was gone. Olivia hadn't just stolen money. She had stolen my future. I pressed a hand to my chest, as if I could hold myself together. The kitchen, once warm with light and memory, felt cold, suffocating. I thought of Olivia laughing as she cooked, the two of us planning to repaint the spare bedroom, sitting up late talking about dreams. Were those moments real, or had I been blind, clinging to an image of her that never existed? How could Olivia, my rock, my family, do this to me? The question thundered inside me, louder than my heartbeat. My eyes stung, but the tears refused to fall. Instead, anger surged, hot and unrelenting, burning through the shock. Betrayal doesn't whisper. It crashes, tearing through you, leaving scars in places you didn't know could hurt. I wandered into the living room, my bare feet dragging across the faded rug. Family photos lined the walls. Olivia holding me at kindergarten graduation, the two of us grinning over ice cream cones, her eyes bright with pride at my college acceptance. I stared at those frozen smiles, and a chill ran down my spine. Had she ever truly meant it? Or had resentment always lurked beneath her sacrifices, waiting for the moment to strike? Outside the window, the street looked unchanged. Children shouted, neighbors waved, the world moved on as if nothing had shifted. But inside this house, everything had cracked. They couldn't hear the silence roaring in my ears. They couldn't feel the fracture that split through me. I picked up the letter again, smoothing the wrinkles with shaking hands. The paper was damp now, softened by sweat. "This is for our good." I whispered it aloud, as if the words might suddenly reveal meaning. But they echoed hollowly, meaningless. For whose good? Hers, mine, ours? They felt like the voice of a stranger, not the sister I had trusted with my life. My fist tightened until the edges of the paper cut into my skin. The sting anchored me. Pain I could handle. Rage I could wield. Olivia had betrayed me, stolen from me, tried to erase me with forged ink and empty numbers. But I would not collapse. I would not let her decide my ending. I stood in the center of the living room, sunlight slicing harshly through the curtains. The hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the clock, the distant buzz of a mower, all faded behind the roar inside me. I clutched the letter like a weapon, a symbol of everything taken from me, and in that moment I made a vow. I would uncover the truth. I would reclaim what was mine, and I would not stop until justice was in my hands. The house was still unnervingly so as I stood in the living room with the crumpled letter digging into my palm. The faint scent of morning coffee lingered in the air, bitter and stale, clinging to the unwashed mugs scattered on the table. Sunlight pushed timidly through the curtains, striping the floor with pale lines, but nothing about the light felt warm. Everything felt wrong. I stared down at the jagged words Olivia had left me. "Sophie, this is for our good." 7 words, sharp as glass. They cut into me with every glance. For our good? The phrase circled in my head like a vulture. What could she possibly mean? My throat tightened as I reached for my phone. My hands were unsteady, and the screen lit up with a harsh glow that made my stomach lurch. I pulled up Olivia's contact, the one still saved under Liv, my rock. My thumb hovered over the call button. I hesitated just long enough to imagine her answering, her familiar voice soothing, telling me there was some mistake. I pressed the button anyway. The ringing echoed in my ear, each tone stretching longer than the last. My pulse pounded in my temples. She didn't pick up. I tried again and again, but all I got was silence. No voicemail, no explanation, just silence. Then my phone buzzed in my hand. A message. My breath caught, hope flaring, but the words on the screen gutted me. "Don't look for me, it'll be fine." That was it. No greeting, no apology, no explanation. Just those 7 words, cold, final, the same brevity as the letter, as if my entire life could be dismissed with a single sentence. I sank onto the couch, the leather sighing beneath me, my phone glowing in my lap. My eyes traced the words over and over until they blurred. "Don't look for me, it'll be fine." But how could it possibly be fine? She'd drained our account, she'd signed away our house, my house. And now she wanted me not to look for her? I rubbed at my chest, trying to slow the pounding of my heart. The silence of the house pressed in, suffocating. This home had always been full of life, late-night conversations, Olivia humming as she cooked, our laughter bouncing off the walls. Now it was nothing but still air and staring photographs. I looked around. The family pictures on the walls caught my eye. Me in cap and gown, Olivia's proud arm around my shoulders, the both of us smiling with ice cream cones dripping down our wrists, snapshots of a life I thought was built on love. Their smiles mocked me now. They were frozen reminders of a bond that might never have been what I believed. I whispered to myself, barely audible, "Her words sound like a stranger's. Where's the sister who raised me?" My voice cracked on the last syllable, and the sound startled me. My phone screen dimmed, her message glowing faintly before fading to black. I unlocked it again, staring as if I could pull her face from those words. But there was nothing there. No trace of the Olivia I knew. Confusion knotted with fear, winding tighter and tighter around me. My mind spun with possibilities, each darker than the last. Why would she do this? What had driven her to betray me so completely? Was she running from someone? Was she hiding something I couldn't see? But fear wasn't the only thing stirring. Anger rose, sharp and relentless, pushing against the edges of my dread. She thought she could vanish with my money, with my home, with my trust, and dismiss me with a single text. She thought she could silence me with vagueness. She was wrong. I pushed myself up from the couch, my legs unsteady. The mug on the coffee table was still half full, the surface film reflecting the light. I shoved it aside, the sharp clink echoing through the quiet room. My eyes fell back to the letter crumpled on the table. The ink had bled slightly, pressed too hard into the fibers. My fingers itched to rip it to shreds, but instead I folded it, slipping it into my pocket like evidence. Because that's what it was now, evidence of betrayal. I grabbed my phone again. If Olivia wouldn't give me answers, I'd have to find them myself. The first place to start was obvious. The bank. Where had the money gone? How had she signed away the house so easily? If she thought I'd stay paralyzed in this silence, she underestimated me. Still, as I stood in the middle of the living room, the weight of it all pressed down hard. The quiet was louder than any noise, a vacuum that pulled at my resolve. Every sound seemed amplified. The hum of the fridge, the faint groan of the pipes, even the soft creak of the wooden floor beneath my feet. This house had been alive once, a place of warmth and hope. Now it was hollow, haunted by absence. I clutched my phone tighter, Olivia's text still glaring in my mind. "Don't look for me, it'll be fine." My jaw clenched until my teeth ached. "No," I whispered, the word tasting bitter in my mouth. "It won't be fine, not until I know the truth." The fear didn't vanish, but I let anger carry me forward. If I had to dig into every shadow, I would. If I had to turn this betrayal inside out to understand it, I'd do it. Olivia could run, but she couldn't hide from the damage she'd left behind, and she couldn't hide from me. I grabbed my keys, the metal cold and biting in my hand, and moved toward the door. Each step was heavy but certain. The letter burned in my pocket, the phone still warm in my grip. The mystery of why she had done this and where the money had gone was a storm building inside me. I knew one thing: the only way out of this silence was to break it wide open, and I was ready to start. The glass doors of the bank slid open with a hollow sigh, letting in the bright sting of Atlanta sunlight behind me. For a moment I stood still, just inside, staring at the sterile white tiles that stretched across the lobby floor. Everything about this place smelled of polish and recycled air, the faint hum of fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. My chest tightened as I moved forward. My legs felt heavier with every step, as if the truth waiting inside was already pulling me under. The clerk, a young man with nervous eyes, greeted me with the kind of smile that belonged to routine, not sincerity. "How can I help you today?" he asked, voice practiced, polite. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice steady. "I need to see the records for my joint account. Something's wrong, very wrong." He nodded quickly, perhaps sensing the edge in my tone, and led me to a desk tucked away behind a low partition. The fluorescent lights above flickered slightly, casting everything in a harsh, unforgiving glow. My hands trembled as I slid my ID across the counter. The plastic clicked against the wood. The clerk tapped at his keyboard, his fingers moving with the kind of speed that only comes from repetition. I leaned forward, my stomach twisting with every second that passed. The monitor's reflection glowed faintly in his glasses. He hesitated, his jaw tightening. "What is it?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. "Your sister, she transferred the funds to a company called Bright Futures LLC over the course of 3 months. His voice wavered, just enough to betray his discomfort. The words hit me like a physical blow. 3 months? I repeated, disbelief scraping against my throat. She's been doing this for 3 months? He nodded, quickly turning the monitor so I could see. My heart lurched as rows of transactions appeared, each one a fresh wound. 10,000 here, 15 there, a steady siphoning like blood draining drop by drop until nothing remained. I leaned closer, the cold blue light of the screen burning into my eyes. My name appeared in a scanned document at the bottom of the records. My signature, or what was supposed to be my signature. The lines were familiar but off, slightly too careful, too deliberate, Olivia's hand disguised as mine. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the desk to steady myself, my nails biting into the wood. My mind reeled back to all the nights I'd worked overtime, the mornings I'd dragged myself out of bed to take freelance jobs, the sacrifices I'd made so we could keep this house. Every exhausted hour was sitting right there, swallowed by the name of a company I'd never heard before. Bright Futures, I whispered under my breath, tasting the name like something sour. Who were they? And why would Olivia send everything there? My hands shook so violently, I nearly dropped my phone as I pulled it from my pocket. I snapped photos of the screen, one after another, each click of the camera sharp in the sterile silence. Proof, evidence. Whatever this was, it was bigger than a misunderstanding. Bigger than desperation. This was planned. She wasn't just reckless, I thought, my pulse pounding in my ears. She planned this. Who is this stranger I called my sister? The clerk shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his fingers fidgeting against the desk. "I'm sorry," he murmured, eyes darting away as if he couldn't bear to look at me any longer. I couldn't answer him. My throat was raw, words stuck behind the storm churning inside me. Rage simmered, hot and electric, pressing against my skin until it felt like fire might burst from my veins. At the same time, grief tugged heavy at my chest, each breath a battle against the weight of betrayal. I forced myself to stand, my chair scraping against the tile. The clerk flinched at the sound. I tucked my phone back into my pocket, the photos safe inside. My legs felt unsteady as I walked away from the desk, past the tidy lines of waiting customers and the potted plants that looked too plastic to be real. Outside, the city roared back to life. Cars honked as traffic snarled along the bustling Atlanta street. The air was hot and sticky, exhaust fumes mixing with the faint sweetness of food trucks parked nearby. Life moved forward, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. I stood on the sidewalk, clutching my bag, the documents burned into my mind. Bright Futures LLC. The name pulsed like a neon sign in my head. What was it? Who was behind it? And why would Olivia stake everything, our home, our savings, even my identity on this? I closed my eyes, the weight of her betrayal crashing over me again. I had believed her when she said we were building a future together. I had believed her promises, her sacrifices, her love. Now every memory was stained, every smile cast in shadow. But beneath the ache, determination hardened. She had stolen my money, my home, even my signature. But she would not steal my resolve. If Olivia thought she could bury me in silence, she was wrong. I opened my eyes, the sunlight glaring harshly off car windows, and stepped off the curb with new purpose. I didn't know what bright futures was yet. I didn't know why Olivia had turned into someone I barely recognized. But I knew one thing with certainty. I was going to find out. By the time I reached the small grocery store where Olivia had worked for years, the sun had already dipped behind the Atlanta skyline, painting the streets in a pale orange haze. The parking lot was nearly empty, the last few customers pushing carts toward their cars, the rattling of wheels echoing in the humid air. My palms were slick, my chest tight, but I forced myself forward. This place had always smelled like produce and cleaning solution, a blend that felt ordinary, safe. Tonight, it felt like a place holding secrets. I slipped in through the sliding doors, their mechanical sigh greeting me like an unwelcome reminder that there was no turning back. Inside, the overhead lights buzzed faintly, harsh and cold. I kept my head low, weaving past aisles of cereal and canned soup until I reached the back hallway. The air shifted here, colder, quieter, carrying the faint metallic hum of the refrigeration units. My pulse hammered as I approached the back room door. This was where Olivia had spent countless hours, clocking in, stacking paperwork, probably eating lunch from a wrinkled paper bag. I had been here before to pick her up, never imagining I would return like this, heart racing with dread. The door was locked. Of course it was. I hesitated, glancing over my shoulder, the silence of the empty store pressing against me. My fingers fumbled in my bag until they closed around the small pocket knife I always carried. I slid it into the lock, the metal scraping softly as I coaxed the mechanism. My breath caught with every click, my ear straining for footsteps. Finally, the lock gave way with a reluctant snap. The back room smelled faintly of dust and cardboard. The single overhead bulb flickered weakly, casting long shadows across stacks of boxes and scattered supplies. A refrigerator hummed steadily in the corner, its vibration rattling through the thin floor. My eyes landed on a desk pushed against the wall, its surface layered with old papers and a thin film of dust. Olivia's desk. I approached it slowly, my chest constricting. I had no idea what I hoped to find, some explanation, some proof that would make this all make sense. My fingers trembled as I tried the top drawer. Locked. I bit down on my lip and forced the knife into the small gap. The drawer resisted, groaning as if it knew it wasn't meant to open for me. One final push, and it slid free. The sound made my heart leap into my throat, but what I saw inside made it stop altogether. A stack of receipts spilled out, paper fluttering like wounded birds across the desk and floor. I crouched quickly, scooping them up with shaking hands. Each one was stamped the same way. Bright Futures, LLC. The name hit me like a knife, sharp and merciless. I stared at the receipts, one after another, the ink dark and permanent against thin paper. Every slip felt like a lie Olivia had told me, each transaction a betrayal stacked neatly on top of the next. I imagined her sitting here, sliding these into the drawer, hiding them away while smiling at me across our dinner table. My breath shuddered as I whispered under my breath, "Every receipt feels like a lie she told me. How deep does this go?" Then I saw it. Tucked beneath the last receipt was a small note, the paper yellowed and worn at the edges. My fingers froze as I pulled it free. The handwriting was hurried, Olivia's. 4 words that made my stomach twist. Meet VK at Route 20 Motel. I sank into the chair, the note trembling in my hands. VK, the initials carved themselves into my mind, faceless but menacing. Who was VK? What did Olivia have to do with them? And why the motel? My thoughts spiraled, each question darker than the last. The refrigerator hummed louder, as if mocking the silence pressing in on me. I stuffed the receipts into my pocket, the paper crinkling against my jeans, and folded the note carefully before slipping it beside them. Evidence. Proof that Olivia wasn't just tangled in financial deceit, she was meeting someone, maybe orchestrating something bigger. I pushed away from the desk, my chair scraping loudly against the concrete floor, my ears strained, waiting for footsteps, for someone to burst through the door and catch me in the act. But no one came. The only sound was my ragged breathing and the faint hum of the lights above. I glanced around the back room one last time. Dust clung to the edges of boxes, cobwebs stretched across the corners, but the air felt alive with something hidden, something dangerous. This place wasn't just where Olivia worked. It was where she had hidden parts of herself I had never seen. I stood, my knees unsteady, my fingers tightening around the receipts in my pocket. My chest ached with betrayal, but beneath it was something else, resolve. I couldn't walk away now. The motel loomed in my mind, a place waiting with answers I wasn't sure I wanted, answers that could shatter me further or finally bring the truth into light. I pulled the door shut behind me, the lock clicking back into place. The hallway was empty, the hum of the store's freezers echoing faintly. I forced my steps steady as I moved back through the aisles, past shelves stacked with bread and milk, past customers who had no idea I was carrying pieces of my sister's secrets in my pocket. When I stepped back into the humid evening air, the sky was streaked with violet and red, the last traces of sunlight bleeding away. The note burned against my leg like a brand. Route 20 Motel, VK. Olivia's choices were no longer just hidden transactions. They were physical meetings, whispered plans in places I had never been. The betrayal carved deeper with every step I took toward my car, but so did my determination. Fear clawed at me, whispering that I might not like what I found. But fear wasn't enough to stop me. Not anymore. The motel was waiting, and so was the truth. The next morning, I sat in my car outside a crowded cafe in Midtown Atlanta, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles had gone white. The city pulsed around me, cars honking, people weaving through crosswalks, a siren wailing faintly in the distance, but all I could hear was the echo of Olivia's note in my head. "This is for our good." My stomach twisted as I thought about the receipts, the motel, the name Bright Futures LLC. The only person I could think to call was Jenna, the real estate broker who had helped me buy our house. She knew the property, the contracts, the process. Maybe she could make sense of the forged papers, the false signatures. I pushed open the cafe door, and the warm scent of roasted coffee beans wrapped around me, almost comforting. The place buzzed with life, espresso machines hissing, cups clinking, chairs scraping across the floor. A barista called out orders over the chatter, and sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting golden stripes across the tables. For a second, it felt like any ordinary morning in the city, but my heart beat too fast for anything to feel normal. Jenna was already there, sitting at a corner table by the window. She looked just the same, polished, professional, with her auburn hair pulled back neatly and her blazer pressed sharp. But when her eyes met mine, there was something else there. Concern. She stood quickly, pulling me into a brief hug before we sat. "Sophie," she said softly, as if testing the weight of my name. "I got your message. You sounded shaken. What happened?" I slid into the chair opposite her, the wood cool against my palms as I tried to steady myself. I didn't want to unravel here, not in the middle of a cafe filled with strangers. But the words tumbled out anyway, about the empty account, the forged contract, and the mysterious company name stamped across every receipt. Jenna listened without interrupting, her brows furrowing, her hands folded tightly around her coffee cup. When I finished, there was a heavy silence. The sound of silverware clattering at the next table felt jarringly loud. I stared at Jenna, waiting, hoping she could tell me it was all some mistake. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Sophie, Bright Futures LLC is owned by Victor Kane." The name landed like a punch. I had never heard it before, but the way she said it made my chest tighten. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice rough. Her lips pressed together as if she hated being the one to say it. "A real estate mogul, technically, but his reputation, it's bad. He's been tied to scams, fraudulent flips, deals that left families homeless. He uses shell companies to cover his tracks. Bright Futures is one of them." I sat back, the noise of the cafe blurring around me. My fingers traced the rim of my untouched mug, the ceramic warm against my skin. So Olivia hadn't just drained our account. she'd tied herself to someone dangerous. Jenna hesitated, then added, "Sophie, Olivia might have been coerced." Her voice was low, almost a whisper, but the words cut through me. I blinked at her, my throat tightening. "Coerced? You think someone forced her?" "I don't know," Jenna admitted, eyes darting to the window as if afraid someone might overhear. "But Kane isn't the kind of man people say no to. If Olivia got involved with him, it might not have been by choice." Her words cracked something in me. For days, anger had been my armor. Anger at the betrayal, at the lies, at watching everything I built collapse. But now a different fear seeped in. If Olivia was trapped, manipulated, threatened, then what did that mean for her? For me? Still, the silence between us stung. She could have told me. She could have trusted me. Instead, she left me with a note and vanished. My thoughts spun. Is Olivia a pawn or a player? I need to know before I lose everything. Jenna reached into her bag and slid something across the table, a small, glossy card. I picked it up, the edges firm against my fingertips. Victor Kane, Bright Futures LLC, Atlanta, GA. The black letters seemed to stare back at me, bold and unyielding. I clenched the card so hard it bent slightly. My pulse throbbed in my ears, matching the rhythm of my resolve. The cafe sounds faded, the hiss of steam, the clink of plates, the murmur of conversation, and all I could hear was the question echoing in my head. Was Olivia a victim caught in Kane's web, or had she chosen this path herself? I slipped the card into my pocket, the paper burning against my thigh like a challenge. Either way, the truth was out there, tangled in Kane's world, and I wasn't going to stop until I found it. When I looked back at Jenna, her eyes were worried, but steady. "Be careful, Sophie," she said quietly. I nodded, though my chest felt heavy. Careful wasn't an option anymore. Careful wouldn't save my house. Careful wouldn't save my sister. I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping against the floor, and stood. The city outside buzzed with life, but for me, everything narrowed to a single point. Victor Kane. I was going to confront him. And whatever truth he held, I was ready to face it, no matter how much it broke me. The city sun glared against the steel and glass towers of Midtown as I stood outside Kane Realty, my reflection ghosting back at me in the polished doors. My stomach twisted, nerves tightening like a knot I couldn't untangle. I drew a slow breath, pressed my palm to the cool glass, and stepped inside. The lobby was immaculate, white marble floors so glossy I could see my own strained face in them, air chilled with the faint sting of lemon polish. Every sound echoed, the soft click of my shoes, the faint murmur of voices behind closed doors, the distant hum of the elevators. I forced myself toward the receptionist's desk, my phone hidden in the pocket of my blazer, already set to record. "Victor Kane is expecting me," I lied, my voice steady despite the pulse hammering in my ears. The receptionist barely looked up, her manicured nails tapping the keyboard before she gestured toward the elevator. 20th floor. As the elevator rose, the city sprawled wider beneath me, but my gaze fixed on my own reflection in the mirrored walls. I smoothed my blazer, whispered under my breath, "Stay calm, stay in control." The soft chimes signaled the 20th floor, and the doors opened to a corridor lined with glass offices. At the far end waited a door etched with polished letters, "Victor Kane, Executive Office." I pushed it open. The room was a stage set for power. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the Atlanta skyline, sunlight splintering across the glass towers. His desk gleamed with polished wood, cluttered with contracts and sleek pens arranged with surgical precision. A faint smell of leather and paper hung in the air. And there he was. Victor Kane rose smoothly from behind the desk, his suit crisp, his slicked-back hair gleaming under the overhead lights. He moved with the confidence of a man who had never been told no. His smile spread wide, too wide, practiced like a performance. But his eyes, pale, sharp, never softened. They searched me the way a hawk sizes up prey. "Ms. Carter," he said warmly, extending a hand I ignored. "Welcome. I hear you're looking for opportunities." My palms were clammy, but I returned his smile with one I'd practiced in the mirror. "Yes, I've been considering investment options. A friend mentioned your company." My words sounded steady, though my heart thundered like a drumline. He gestured to the chair opposite his desk. I sat, the leather cool against my skin, forcing myself to breathe evenly as I slid my phone closer to the edge of my pocket. Every second mattered. "So," Victor leaned back, fingers steepled, "what exactly are you seeking? Growth? Security? A brighter future, perhaps?" The words oozed from him, smooth as oil. That phrase, bright futures, slid into the air like a poisoned blade. My skin prickled. I swallowed hard. "I heard you worked with my sister, Olivia Carter." For a fleeting moment his smile froze, then reappeared tighter. "Ah, Olivia. Bright girl, determined. She signed on to a big opportunity with us. Very promising." My nails dug into my palm under the desk. "Signed on? For what, exactly?" He spread his hands with a rehearsed shrug. "Real estate development. High return, low risk. She knew what she was doing." The casual lie stung. I leaned forward, letting the mask of politeness drop. "That house, the one she sold, it wasn't hers to sell, it was mine. She forged my signature." His grin vanished, his jaw clenched, and when he spoke again, the warmth was gone. His eyes hardened, the false charm stripped away. "You're the real owner," he said flatly. "Yes," I answered, my voice trembling, but I refused to back down. Silence pressed in. The hum of the air conditioner filled the space like static. Victor leaned forward, elbows on the polished desk, his voice low, venomous. "Stop digging, Ms. Carter, or you'll lose more than the house." The words struck like ice water down my spine. My breath caught, the air thick in my throat. He wasn't bluffing. I felt the truth of his threat in the way his lips curled, in the quiet fury etched into his face. For a heartbeat, fear rooted me to the chair, sharp and paralyzing. But fear gave way to fire. His threat wasn't a wall, it was confirmation. Confirmation that Olivia hadn't simply turned on me in some careless act. She was tied to him, manipulated, controlled, maybe even coerced. I forced my expression into calm, though my pulse thundered in my ears. "Thank you for your time," I said evenly, standing on legs that threatened to buckle. My hand brushed the smooth surface of his desk as I rose, grounding myself. Victor's gaze tracked me to the door, his silence heavier than words. I walked out, refusing to look back. The glass walls of the hallway reflected my pale face, eyes too wide, mouth pressed tight. My phone buzzed faintly in my pocket, the recording safe. His threat, his own voice, was now evidence, a fuse waiting for the spark. When the elevator doors closed behind me, my shoulders sagged, and I let out a shaky breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. My hand trembled as I pressed it to my chest. His threat means I'm close to the truth. But how far did Olivia go? The question echoed inside me, refusing to quiet. Outside, Atlanta's noise crashed over me like a wave. Car horns blared, footsteps pounded against pavement, a vendor's voice rose above the traffic. The warmth of the air hit me, heavy and humid, clinging to my skin. I drew in a deep breath, the city's chaos grounding me after the sterile chill of his office. I slipped a hand into my pocket, feeling the edge of Victor's business card and the phone that now carried his words. It felt like holding both a weapon and a curse. The skyline loomed ahead, vast and indifferent, but something inside me had shifted. Victor Kane thought he could scare me into silence. He thought a threat would break me, but it only sharpened me. I walked away from Kane Realty with my heart still pounding, knowing I had just lit a fuse I couldn't put out. The explosion was coming, and I intended to survive it. The glass towers of downtown Atlanta were still glinting behind me when I slid into my car, closing the door with a hollow thud that seemed to swallow the sound of the city. For a moment, I just sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel, the sting of Victor's threat vibrating in my chest like an aftershock. The leather beneath my palms felt too smooth, too cool, grounding me and mocking me at the same time. Then my phone buzzed. The vibration startled me so sharply I almost dropped it. My breath caught. Olivia? Finally? But when I glanced down, the glow of the screen chilled me more than it comforted. One new voicemail, no caller ID. The words glared back at me in silence, daring me to press play. I hesitated. My thumb hovered. Who could it be? Then with a shaky breath I tapped the screen. The voice that spilled out was low, distorted, but it carried urgency that gripped me like a fist around my throat. "Victor's planning something big, Sophie. Check the Route 20 motel." Static crackled, then nothing. The car was suddenly too quiet. I stared at the phone as if more words might appear, but the screen dimmed to black, leaving only my reflection. Wide eyes, pale skin, trembling lips. My stomach twisted. Who knows my name? Who knows what Victor is planning? And why do they want me at the motel? The voicemail replayed in my head on a loop. I hit play again. The same urgent whisper. The same name. My name. Like a warning only meant for me. The Route 20 Motel. The very place Olivia's note had pointed to. A chill laced down my spine. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a thread pulling me closer to her. I started the car, the engine rumbling like thunder under my feet. The dashboard lights painted my hands in a pale glow, and for a moment I thought they looked like someone else's hands, hands belonging to a woman unraveling. I merged into the traffic, neon signs flashing across my windshield, each one too bright, too loud. As I drove, the city began to thin out. The skyscrapers retreated behind me like watchtowers fading into shadow. Warehouses took their place, then hollowed out lots where weeds claimed cracked pavement. Streetlights grew sparser, their yellow glow fractured, leaving stretches of road where the darkness pressed too close. My headlights carved a fragile path, the beam catching litter fluttering like lost pages. The voicemail echoed in my head. Victor's planning something big, Sophie. Every time the words repeated, my grip on the steering wheel tightened. Who's helping me? I whispered into the dark. And why is Olivia hiding here? By the time I saw the motel, my heart was drumming so loud it drowned out the engine. The neon sign buzzed in flickers, letters missing, so it read more like Route 20 Moel. The O stuttered, glowing and dying in uneven pulses. The building itself sagged under the weight of neglect, its paint peeling in long, curling strips, windows fogged with grime. I pulled into the lot. Gravel crunched beneath my tires like bones breaking. A handful of cars were scattered across the lot. An old sedan with a missing hubcap, a pickup with rust eating away at the bumper, a van with curtains pulled tight. These weren't travelers. They were people hiding, just like Olivia. I shut off the engine. The sudden silence felt oppressive, broken only by the buzzing of the neon and the faint wheeze of a vending machine humming against the wall. The air was damp, thick with the smell of stale cigarette smoke and mildew. I tucked my phone in my hand, gripping it as though it were the only weapon I had. The corridor stretched ahead of me, a narrow hallway lined with doors. The carpet squished slightly under my shoes, damp in places. The wallpaper, once beige, was stained with patches that looked like old water damage, peeling away to reveal the drywall beneath. My fingertips brushed the wall for balance, catching on the rough edges where paint flaked away. Each door was numbered, though most were faded or half gone, digits hanging by glue that no longer wanted to hold. My chest tightened with every step, every breath shallow and sharp. And then I stopped. Room 12. The number was crooked, one nail loose, but I knew. Olivia's note had led me here. My throat closed up, the air catching in my lungs. Behind this door could be my sister, the girl who raised me, who sacrificed her future for mine, or someone else entirely. A stranger, reshaped by secrets I hadn't yet uncovered. I raised my hand. My knuckles hovered inches from the wood. My heart banged against my ribs so hard I pressed a palm to my chest as if I could steady it. What if she's here? What if she isn't? What if Victor's men got here first? I knocked. Once. Soft. The sound was sharper than I expected, echoing faintly down the hallway before being smothered by the still, smoky air. I froze, straining to listen. At first, nothing. Then, faint shuffling, the creak of floorboards. Someone was inside, moving. My grip on the phone tightened, my other hand curling into a fist. Hope surged, tangled violently with dread. Please, Olivia, please let it be you. Olivia? The whisper cracked as it left my throat. Silence. Then the scrape of movement again, closer this time. I pressed my palm flat against the door, as though I could push through, as though I could feel her through the thin layer of wood. My heart begged for an answer, for her voice, for anything that would tell me she was still my sister, and not just another lie. I knocked again, harder this time, my knuckles stinging. "It's me," I said, my voice trembling between demand and plea. "It's Sophie." The silence that followed was suffocating. My chest heaved, every nerve on fire, every second stretching longer than the last. Then the doorknob rattled, time fractured. My pulse thundered in my ears, drowning everything else. My entire body locked, bracing, because behind that door waited the truth. Whether it shattered me or saved me, I couldn't know. And slowly the door began to open. The door creaked open, and there she was, Olivia. Her hair was tangled, falling in damp strands around her face, her eyes wide and glassy like she hadn't slept in days. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My sister stood just inches away, the sister who had raised me, protected me, and betrayed me. The air between us carried the stale stench of smoke and cheap detergent seeping out of the cramped motel room behind her. "Sophie!" Her voice cracked, barely more than a whisper. She stepped back, motioning me in, but her shoulders hunched as though she already expected me to judge her. The room was small, suffocating. The carpet was stained, curling at the edges. A single lamp on the nightstand flickered, buzzing faintly, throwing shadows that made her look even more hollow. The window was shut tight, grime clouding the glass, but beyond it I could see faint Atlanta lights shimmering in the distance like a world that didn't belong to us anymore. I closed the door behind me, the latch clicking with finality. For a moment silence stretched, just our ragged breaths filling the space. Then Olivia broke. "I kept some of it," she blurted, her hands twisting together, trembling. $10,000. It wasn't all for Victor. I used it to pay off my debts." Her confession hit like a slap. My ears rang, and I had to steady myself against the wall, the wallpaper rough and peeling under my fingers. You took money for yourself?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face now, tracing lines through the dirt on her cheeks. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. Victor promised. He promised it was just a deal, that we'd make it back. I thought I could fix everything." My throat burned, the words catching before they could form. Fix everything? By tearing my life apart? I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to shake her until the truth fell out of her pockets. But before I could, she spoke again, words that sliced deeper than the first. "It wasn't just Victor. Jenna. She's the one who introduced me to him." Olivia's voice dropped to a whisper, raw and shaking. "She set it up, and she got a cut." The name ripped through me. Jenna. The woman who had smiled at me over coffee, who had lowered her voice to warn me Olivia might have been coerced. The woman I thought was my ally. My chest constricted until I thought I'd collapse. "Jenna?" The word came out strangled. Olivia nodded, wiping her face with the back of her hand, her eyes darting away in shame. "She told me Victor could help, that it was safe. She made money off the sale. I'm so sorry, Sophie. I didn't know what else to do." The room tilted. My friend, my sister, both liars, both knives I never saw coming. I pressed my fists to my thighs to keep from shaking. Inside me, anger burned hot and wild, a fire so fierce it almost drowned the ache in my chest. Jenna smiled in my face, hugged me, warned me, and all the while, she was part of it. And Olivia, my Olivia, chose her debts over our home. I swallowed hard, forcing my face into something calm, something Olivia couldn't read. I stepped forward and wrapped my arms around her. She shuddered against me, sobbing into my shoulder. My arms tightened around her, but my jaw clenched so hard it hurt. Inside, I was screaming. Outside, I whispered, "It's okay. We'll figure this out." Because even as I held her, even as she broke in my arms, I knew I couldn't forgive. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I needed her confession. I needed her words. She clung to me, repeating, I'm sorry, over and over, her voice muffled by the fabric of my shirt. I let her. I let her believe I was only her sister again, not the woman cataloging every word, every tremor of guilt, storing it like evidence in the vault of my memory. My sister and my friend, both liars, I thought, the words like iron. How do I trust anyone now? When she finally pulled back, her face was swollen with tears, her body sagging like she'd spilled out everything she could. I brushed her hair back gently, nodding, even though my blood felt like fire under my skin. I have to go, I said softly. Her lips parted, like she wanted to beg me to stay, But she didn't. She just nodded, collapsing back onto the edge of the bed, the flickering light casting her shadow long across the wall. I opened the door, the motel air rushing in thick with smoke and night. My phone was in my pocket, pressing against my thigh, recording her voice, her confession. Proof. As I stepped out into the darkness, my resolve hardened. Victor, Jenna. They thought they could bleed me dry, use my sister as their weapon, and leave me with nothing. But I had their words now, and I would use them. Still, one question gnawed at me, lingering like the stale cigarette stench in the hallway. Who sent that voicemail? Who was watching me from the shadows, pushing me closer to this truth? The motel door shut behind me with a dull thud, and I stood in the humid night air, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles ached. It felt like holding both salvation and a curse. I walked away with my chest heavy, my anger sharper than ever, and a vow burning in my veins. I would make them pay, every single one of them. The hum of voices filled the Atlanta Community Center, vibrating through the folding chairs lined in tight rows. The air was thick with the smell of sweat and anticipation, mingling with the faint aroma of coffee drifting from a table near the entrance. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, their pale glow casting everyone in a harsh brightness that left nowhere to hide. The windows along the side wall reflected the evening sky, streaked in orange and purple, as if the city itself was holding its breath. I stood at the front, my hands gripping the edge of the podium so tightly the wood dug into my palms. My heart slammed against my ribs, faster than it had in Victor's office, faster than it had at the motel. This wasn't just between me, Olivia, and the people who had betrayed us. Tonight, the whole community was here. Neighbors, friends, even a few reporters with cameras perched on tripods, their red lights blinking like unblinking eyes. I cleared my throat, my voice carrying through the microphone, thinner than I wanted but steady enough. You all know me. You know my home. You've watched me work late nights, pay off my mortgage, and fight to keep what's mine. But what you don't know is that it was stolen. A ripple moved through the crowd, shifting in their chairs, leaning forward. I pulled a folder from my bag, the papers inside trembling with the shake of my hands. I held them up high, letting the overhead lights glint across the pages. "These are the bank records," I said, my voice gaining force with every word. $50,000 funneled to Bright Futures LLC, my name forged, my house sold. Gasps erupted, a murmur spreading like fire across the room. Someone whispered my name. Another hissed, "Forged?" And that's not all. I placed my phone on the podium, pressing play. The room filled with Victor Kane's voice, smooth at first, then twisting into that growl that had crawled under my skin. "Stop digging or you'll lose more than the house." The sound echoed, bouncing off the walls. Silence followed, heavy and stunned. I saw heads turn toward Victor, who sat stiff in the third row, his polished suit looking suddenly too sharp, too slick. He shifted, his jaw clenched, eyes darting toward the door. But I wasn't finished. "And Jenna," I said, forcing my voice not to break. My gaze found her near the back, her arms folded tight, her eyes narrowed as if bracing for a storm. The woman I trusted as my broker, the woman who sat across from me in a cafe and warned me Olivia might have been coerced. She wasn't protecting me. She was protecting herself, because she took a cut. She profited from the sale of my home. The crowd gasped again, louder this time, sharp like the crack of glass shattering. All eyes turned on her. Her face drained of color, lips trembling though she said nothing. The cameras swung toward her, lenses zooming in, immortalizing her shame. "She got a commission," I pressed on, my voice hard. "She betrayed me. She betrayed every single one of you who trusted her to handle your homes, your futures." The noise swelled, angry voices, whispers. Someone shouted, "Is that true?" Another hissed, "Shame." Jenna's hands shook as she tried to speak, but no sound came. She shrank into her seat, pale under the harsh light. And then, movement. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Victor rising slowly, his eyes cutting toward the exit, like a predator searching for escape. He smoothed his jacket, plastering on that fake smile, and took a step toward the aisle. Not this time. I slammed my palm against the podium, my voice breaking free like a roar. "He used my sister to steal my home!" The words tore through the room, ringing in every ear, echoing off every wall. People surged to their feet. Some gasped, some shouted. The sound became a storm. Victor froze mid-step, his smile cracking. 2 uniformed officers near the doors stepped forward, blocking his path. His eyes flickered, searching for another way out, but there wasn't one. Not anymore. My chest heaved, adrenaline coursing so hot through my veins I thought I might collapse. My gaze swept the crowd, and then it landed on her. Olivia. She stood near the back, her arms wrapped around herself, her face pale and stricken under the fluorescent lights. Her eyes met mine, wide and uncertain, full of guilt and something else I couldn't name. The sister who had confessed in that dingy motel room now stood in front of everyone, her secrets no longer hers alone. My throat tightened. What will she say? Will she stand with me or against me? The room buzzed with voices, the air alive with shock, fury, disbelief. But inside me, a different storm raged. Relief, anger, triumph, fear. The battle wasn't over, not yet. But tonight, in this moment, I had taken my stand. Victor, Jenna, Olivia. The truth was out, and the world was finally watching. I straightened, gripping the podium with one hand and my phone with the other, the evidence still glowing on its screen. My heart pounded, but for the first time, I felt like I wasn't just surviving. I was fighting back. This is my stand, I thought fiercely. Victor and Jenna won't take my life from me. But as the crowd's shouts swelled and the police moved in on Victor, I knew the hardest part was still ahead. Because Olivia's gaze haunted me, heavy with questions and fear, and whatever came next, it would start with her. The community center felt charged, like the air before a storm. The folding chairs were filled, people packed shoulder to shoulder, the lingering buzz of whispered conversations weaving through the hall. Fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, their cold glow throwing sharp shadows across the stage where I stood. The scent of stale coffee and cleaning supplies clung to the air, grounding me even as my heart hammered from what had just unfolded. Victor was cornered, Jenna exposed, and for the first time in months I felt like I had control. And then the sound of movement behind me broke the fragile rhythm. A chair scraped. The soft shuffle of hesitant footsteps drew every gaze. The energy in the room shifted instantly, rippling through the crowd as heads turned toward the back. My breath caught when I saw her. Olivia. She rose slowly like her body was made of stone, her shoulders hunched as if she carried the weight of the world. Her hair was tangled, strands falling across her damp cheeks. Her eyes were swollen, rimmed red, and shining with something rawer than fear. She didn't look at me. She couldn't. Each step she took toward the stage echoed in the silence, the scuff of her shoes louder than any of the gasps around us. I gripped the podium tighter, my palms slick with sweat. I had faced Victor's threats, Jenna's betrayal, even the humiliation of losing my home. But this I wasn't ready for. When Olivia reached the front, the spotlight hit her squarely, washing her pale face in stark light. The crowd hushed completely, as though even their breathing had been swallowed up. She reached for the microphone stand with trembling hands, gripping it so tightly her knuckles bleached white. For a moment she just stood there, head bowed, her chest rising and falling in shaky rhythm. Her first breath into the microphone wavered, a fragile sound that vibrated through the room. The word broke apart. She swallowed, blinking rapidly, tears already threatening to spill. She tried again, her voice cracking but stronger this time. I let greed blind me, betraying Sophie, who deserved better. The words sliced through me like glass. My name on her lips, wrapped in guilt, carried by the microphone into every corner of the room. The crowd shifted uneasily, their murmurs soft, almost sympathetic. Some leaned closer, others shook their heads, but no one looked away. I wanted to close my eyes, to block it out, but I couldn't. I had to hear it. Her hands trembled as she clung to the stand. I told myself I was desperate, that I didn't have a choice. The debts, the pressure, it was like drowning every day. And when Victor came to me, I thought it was a lifeline. But it wasn't. It was a chain, and I grabbed it anyway. Her tears spilled over, streaking down her cheeks. She forced herself to lift her head, and finally her eyes found mine. "Sophie," she whispered, her lips quivering around the sound. "I thought I was protecting myself, but in doing that I destroyed you. I destroyed us. It wasn't just the house. It was your trust, your love, your faith in me, and I can never get that back." The crowd was utterly silent, holding its collective breath. The fluorescent hum filled the void, mingling with the muffled sob caught in Olivia's throat. Her voice broke again, raw and desperate. "I don't deserve forgiveness, not from you, not from anyone here. But I couldn't keep hiding, not anymore." My chest burned, my stomach twisting in knots. Every memory of us. 2 little girls huddled under blankets during thunderstorms, her brushing my hair before school, the laughter we once shared, collided with the sharp sting of the betrayal that had ripped my world apart. I had dreamed of this moment, of her admitting the truth, and yet it didn't feel like victory. It felt like being broken open all over again. Her tears are real, but can I trust her heart again? I forced myself to move, though my legs felt heavy, weighed down with 1,000 emotions. Step by step, I approached her. When I stood close enough, I raised my hand, hesitated for a heartbeat, then placed it gently over hers on the cold microphone stand. Her fingers twitched beneath mine, then clung desperately, as though my touch was the only thing keeping her upright. The crowd stirred, a soft wave of murmurs rolling through them. Some faces were sympathetic, others skeptical, but all of them were watching us. I wanted to scream, to demand why, to pour out the fury that had eaten at me for so long, but when I opened my mouth, no words came. My jaw locked tight, my throat thick with unshed tears. Instead, I just held her hand. Her skin was cold, damp with sweat, shaking beneath mine. I tightened my grip briefly, just enough to let her know I heard her, that I wasn't turning away. Then slowly, deliberately, I let go. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. The crowd's respect for me felt like a weight pressing down on my shoulders. To them, I was the victim who had fought back, who had refused to stay silent. But Olivia's eyes, those eyes drowning in regret and love twisted by desperation, told a story the crowd would never understand. Justice was close now. Victor couldn't escape. Jenna couldn't deny her role. But as I stepped back from Olivia, my pulse still racing, I knew this wasn't the end. Her confession was not closure. It was only the start of a harder, more painful battle, the one between us, the sisters we used to be, and the strangers we had become. A week passed, but the days felt stretched thin, as if time itself had slowed to remind me of everything I had lost. The noise of the trial, the gasps of the crowd, the heated confrontation at the community center, those sounds belonged to another life now. What surrounded me was silence. A silence so heavy it pressed against the walls, seeped into the floorboards, and followed me from room to room like a shadow I couldn't escape. That morning, I walked into the kitchen, the faint smell of coffee still lingering from the night before. On the table, beneath the thin beam of sunlight slipping through the blinds, was a single folded letter. The paper looked ordinary, but my chest tightened when I recognized Olivia's handwriting. My hands hovered above it for a moment, as if touching it might make her real again. The paper was cool against my fingertips, crinkling softly when I unfolded it. "Sophie," it began. My breath caught at the curve of her letters, the loops so familiar, the same ones she used when she passed notes to me in school. "I'll repay the money, but I need time." Her words sat on the page, sharp and unyielding, yet soaked with regret. They echoed inside me like a voice in an empty chamber. Time, that was all she asked for. But hadn't time already betrayed us? Hadn't it turned a lifetime of sisterhood into months of silence, lies, and stolen trust? "She's gone," I whispered, my own voice startling me in the stillness. It sounded strange, foreign, like it belonged to someone older, someone broken. The house was mine again. The judge had ruled in my favor, restoring the deed, exposing Victor's fraud and Jenna's betrayal. On paper, I had won. I should have felt triumphant. Yet standing there, letter trembling in my hand, victory tasted like ashes. I walked through the house that afternoon, each room greeting me with echoes of a life that felt impossibly far away. The living room, bare and echoing, still carried the phantom sound of our laughter. Olivia and I huddled under blankets during thunderstorms, her jokes filling the space with warmth. Now only the hum of the refrigerator answered me. Upstairs, the stairs creaked like they always had, but no one trailed behind me with hurried footsteps. Even my bedroom, freshly painted in soft cream, felt cold, like paint couldn't cover the hollow emptiness betrayal had left. Outside, the world carried on. Jenna's name had been dragged through every headline, her broker license revoked, her reputation shredded. Victor sat behind bars, awaiting charges that promised years of confinement. Their downfalls should have been satisfying, but it wasn't their punishment that haunted me. It wasn't their faces I saw in the quiet moments before sleep. It was Olivia. Her confession at the podium still replayed in my mind, her trembling voice, her tears catching the harsh light, her eyes begging for something she couldn't name. That image was carved into me, deeper than anger, deeper than pain. It was regret, hers and mine, intertwined, impossible to pull apart. The community saw me differently now. Neighbors who once doubted me arrived with soft words and careful casseroles, their kindness wrapping around me like a blanket. Some offered hugs that lingered too long, others pressed my hands with sympathy I hadn't asked for. They respected me, saw me as the survivor, the fighter who had stood against betrayal and won. And yet, their warmth couldn't fill the empty chair at my table, couldn't replace the voice missing from my life. As evening fell, I stood by the window, the sky awash in streaks of orange and purple. Atlanta's skyline glowed in the distance, vibrant and alive, but inside my home everything felt muted. The faint tick of the hallway clock echoed like a heartbeat, too loud against the stillness. Pipes groaned as water rushed through them, a reminder that the house lived even if it no longer felt like home. I picked up Olivia's letter again, smoothing the creases with my palm. "Sophie, I'll repay the money, but I need time." The words pressed against me like a weight. How much time would it take to rebuild trust? Could betrayal ever truly be undone? Or was time only a cruel stretch of distance, pulling us further apart until we were strangers bound only by blood? I pressed the letter against my chest, the paper cool and thin but heavy with everything it carried. My anger still burned, sharp and unyielding, but beneath it, hidden like embers and ashes, was something softer. Hope. Hope that one day she might return, not to the house, not to the life we had lost, but to me. But for now, all I had was this house with its bare walls, this letter that felt like a ghost, and the questions that refused to leave me. She's gone, I thought again, but even as the words formed, they didn't feel final, because part of me was still waiting, still listening for her laughter in the silence, still hoping her promise meant something more than time could measure. As night settled in, shadows stretched long across the walls, and I whispered into the empty room, "Will I ever forgive her? Or will betrayal always haunt me?" No answer came, only the sigh of the wind slipping through the cracks in the old windows, and still I stood there, letter in hand, caught between justice and loneliness, between what was gone and what might never return. Weeks later, life looked different, though the scars of everything I'd lived through still pulsed beneath the surface. I had moved into a modest downtown apartment, tucked between the steady heartbeat of Atlanta traffic and the neon glow that flickered across brick walls at night. The space was small, but it was mine, warm, safe, untainted by betrayal. In its quiet corners, I began to piece myself back together. The old house, the one Victor stole, the one Olivia betrayed me for, was no longer a prison of memories. I had chosen to transform it into something new, something hopeful. Affordable art studios for young dreamers across the city. I remembered nights Olivia and I once stayed up late, sprawled across our bedroom floor, whispering dreams of painting, writing, creating. Back then, those dreams were innocent, untouched by greed or lies. Now, even though she wasn't here, I kept that dream alive. Walking through those empty rooms, now filled with paint-splattered canvases and the faint smell of turpentine, I almost felt like I could hear echoes of what we once hoped for, before everything fractured. My mornings found rhythm and ritual. I would wake early, before the city fully stirred, and sit by my window with a steaming mug of coffee. The heat seeped through the ceramic into my palms, grounding me as the scent of roasted beans mixed with the faint metallic tang of morning rain on pavement. Outside, Atlanta stretched itself awake. The hiss of buses, the faint wail of sirens far off, the shuffle of footsteps on cracked sidewalks. And above it all, the sky unraveled in streaks of peach and gold, the sun pushing night away in a slow, defiant climb. On the table beside me, always, sat two objects that tied me to everything I was trying to reconcile: Olivia's tear-stained apology letter and the silver ring she once gave me. The letter's edges were soft now, folding and unfolding it so many times left its paper tired, its ink smudged. Yet I couldn't stop rereading her words. "Sophie, I'll repay the money, but I need time." Every syllable echoed like a haunting refrain. Time. She had asked for it, but wasn't time exactly what had already slipped through our fingers? Time we once had as sisters, time stolen by deceit, time that might never give back what we'd lost. The ring was different, small, simple, but heavier than it looked. Olivia had given it to me for my birthday years ago, slipping it onto my finger with a mischievous grin, saying it was a forever promise. Now it glinted in the soft light each morning, a shard of memory that cut both ways, a symbol of trust and of how easily trust can shatter. Still, I wore it. Maybe out of stubbornness, maybe out of love that hadn't fully died, maybe because resilience sometimes looks like holding on to what hurt, just to prove it doesn't own you anymore. Her letter promises redemption, but can I open my heart again? At night, when the neon outside bled into the room in pinks and blues, I would scroll through my phone. On impulse, one evening, I had posted about my story. I laid it bare. The lies, the betrayal, the courtroom battles, and the strength it took to stand when my own blood tried to knock me down. I expected silence, maybe judgment. Instead, I found something else. Hundreds of comments flooded in, each one a voice reminding me that I wasn't alone. "You're so strong, Sophie," one person wrote, words that made me cry harder than I expected. Another said, "Your story gave me courage to finally cut ties with my toxic family." And one more whispered through the screen, "I've been betrayed too. Hearing you speak about it makes me feel less broken." Their voices formed a strange chorus, strangers yet connected, a digital net catching me whenever loneliness pressed too hard. For months I had felt like I was screaming into a void, begging for someone to understand. Now I realized the void wasn't empty. It was filled with people carrying scars like mine, waiting for someone to say the words out loud. But even as comfort wrapped around me, a question gnawed deep, sharp as glass. Where was Olivia now? Did she leave Atlanta, her suitcase packed with guilt? Did she think of me each morning when she opened her eyes the way I thought of her? Would there come a day when the letter in my hand was replaced by her presence, standing in front of me with trembling lips and eyes begging not for time, but for forgiveness? Justice had been served. Victor was behind bars, Jenna stripped of her license, their power crumbled. The community respected me now. Neighbors who once whispered doubts now smiled with warmth, some even stopping me on the street to say how proud they were. I had rebuilt, reshaped my life. But justice isn't the same as healing. It doesn't patch the hole left when your own sister is the one who carved the wound. Every morning, coffee steaming in my hand, the letter spread before me, the ring cold against my skin, I repeated the same truth. Betrayal didn't destroy me. It forged me. It carved me into someone who could stand, even alone. Someone who could turn loss into new beginnings, silence into music, betrayal into art. Still, as the city's sunrise painted hope across the sky, I couldn't quiet the thought. Can trust ever truly mend once it's broken? Or does it always leave a crack, a reminder of how fragile even love can be? I don't know the answer. Maybe time will tell. Maybe it won't. But here's what I do know. Resilience is louder than betrayal. Pain may linger, but so does strength. And while Olivia's absence haunts me, her letter and that ring remind me of what I can endure. My house was no longer a home, but in its place stood a sanctuary for young artists to dream. And maybe, in some way, that was the life I was meant to build all along. And maybe, just maybe, that is enough for now. Have you ever faced a betrayal like mine? Share your story in the comments, like this video, and subscribe for more tales of justice and redemption.